The air was thick, a raw wound of cold and dampness clinging to the lungs. Each breath was a shallow scrape, tearing at a throat already raw with fear. Her bare feet slapped against slick, uneven stone, a frantic, desperate rhythm against the throbbing silence of the night. A sliver of moon, a cruel and indifferent crescent, offered just enough light to paint the shadows with monstrous shifting forms. Her breath plumed in the frigid air, ghost-like and fleeting, a testament to the life she was desperately trying to reclaim. The scent of stale urine and rotting refuse, the everyday perfume of her confinement, still clung to her clothes like a phantom chain. Her muscles screamed in searing protest, but the alternative was a paralysis of the spirit, far worse than any physical pain. Every rustle of leaves, every distant bark of a dog, became a hunter's footfall, a shadow stretching to snuff out her fragile hope. She pushed deeper into the labyrinthine darkness, a small, defiant tremor against the vast, crushing weight of an empire. The chill seeped into her bones, not just from the biting wind, but from the cold grip of what lay behind. She imagined the heavy thud of sandals on cobblestones, the guttural shouts, the leashes straining in the hands of men whose faces were carved from stone. The city, a sleeping behemoth, stretched out behind her, its silent buildings holding a million watchful eyes. To escape its grasp felt impossible, a dream woven from desperation. But then a sound, distinct and chilling, cut through the night's muffled blanket, the sharp crack of a whip, followed by a distant, mournful cry. It wasn't for her, not yet, but it was a stark reminder, a cold hand closing around her fleeting breath of freedom. The ground gave way beneath her, a sudden jarring stumble, and for a moment the world tilted. She hit the earth with a gasp, the impact jarring her teeth. For a split second, the world was a confused blur of pain and panic. Her hands scrabbled for purchase on rough earth and tangled roots. The crack of the whip echoed again, closer this time, a cold, sharp sound that sliced through the night. In Rome, a runaway slave was not a person seeking freedom. They were property that had dared to escape, property that needed to be broken, visibly and undeniably, to serve as a terrorizing example. For a woman to defy this system was an even greater transgression. It challenged not only her master's authority, but the very foundations of a society built on obedience. Her punishment would be designed for a dual purpose: to reclaim her body and to crush the spirit of any other who dared to dream. The scent of her pursuers reached her now, leather, sweat, and the musky odor of hunting dogs. She could feel their unseen eyes tracing her path in the inky blackness. The ground beneath her feet became more treacherous, a wild path leading away from the city. But the sounds were closer still, the guttural barks of the dogs, growing louder with each frantic beat of her heart. A sudden glint of metal in the pre-dawn gloom. Not the wilderness, but a patrol. Her heart hammered against her ribs. A wild bird trapped in a cage. She plunged sideways into a dense thicket of thorns. The sharp sting a welcome distraction from the larger terror. She pressed herself against the cold bark of a tree, holding her breath. The barks were now deafening, followed by the heavy thud of boots and low guttural curses. The silence that followed was worse than the noise, an agonizing stretch of uncertainty. Then it broke. A triumphant shout echoed through the trees, followed by the crashing of bodies through the undergrowth. A rough hand seized her arm, yanking her from the thicket with brutal force. The thorns tore at her skin, but the pain was distant, secondary to the crushing weight of defeat. She stumbled, falling to her knees in the damp earth. Above her, silhouetted against the gray dawn, stood two figures, their faces grim, their eyes hard and devoid of pity. The dogs circled her, their low growls a guttural song of triumph. The fragile illusion of freedom shattered, dissolving into the harsh reality of capture. They dragged her back through the waking city, a spectacle of shame. Her wrists were bound with coarse rope. The early risers turned their heads, their gazes a mixture of curiosity, pity, and cold indifference. She felt their eyes like pinpricks. The smells of the city, burning charcoal, ripe fruit, incense, assaulted her. They were the smells of a living world from which she was now utterly severed. She was not taken to her old master's house, but to a public square where a crowd was gathering. A makeshift platform stood in the center. This was to be a public lesson. The first punishment, humiliation and branding. The crowd's murmur was a restless, curious beast. The sunlight felt like a spotlight magnifying her shame. She was pushed onto the platform. The wooden planks were splintered and cold. A hushed silence fell. She heard the clink of metal, the hiss of a brazier. Her eyes, wide with terror, saw the glowing iron, its tip a fiery orange. The heat radiated outwards, a chilling premonition. The pain was instantaneous and absolute, a searing white-hot agony that ripped through her, stealing her breath. A primal scream tore from her throat. The smell of her own burning flesh, acrid and sickening, filled the air. This was a visible, inescapable tether to her transgression, a permanent declaration that she was property, indelibly marked. As the shock subsided, a deep, hollow ache settled in. The crowd began to disperse. The spectacle was over. For them, a momentary diversion. For her, a new beginning in a life defined by pain. She was unbound and collapsed. The burning mark on her skin a heavy, constant weight. But the punishment was far from over. She was taken to a grim compound on the city's outskirts, a mill. The iron-bound gates clanged shut with a sound of finality. Inside, the air was thick with dust and human suffering. The rhythmic groan of heavy millstones was a symphony of despair. Here, her branded skin was a personal condemnation. The relentless, arduous turning would break her body faster than any whip. This was a slow, agonizing death, a systematic erosion of the human spirit. Days blurred into weeks. Her hands became raw, then calloused, then numb. Her shoulders rounded with the strain. She felt herself wasting away, a living skeleton animated by a fading will. The dust from the grinding grain coated her lungs, making each breath a gritty effort. Yet even here, a flicker of defiance sometimes sparked. A shared glance with another woman, a subtle slowing of the millstone. These were minute assertions of individuality, whispers of a spirit refusing to be entirely extinguished. But such whispers were dangerous. The system was designed to detect and crush even the faintest glimmer of hope. The whispers of a new, harsher fate began to circulate. The word mines hung in the air like a death sentence, a place of eternal darkness and backbreaking labor, where life was measured in days. The fear was palpable. One brutal morning, the order came. Her name was called. The other women averted their gazes. She was led away, not to return. The journey was long, into a barren, desolate landscape. The mines loomed, gaping mouths in the side of a mountain, exhaling a chilled, dusty breath. It was a monument to human suffering. Inside, the darkness was absolute, a suffocating blanket. The only light came from flickering oil lamps. The air stank of damp earth and human waste. She was given a pickaxe and pushed into a narrow vein. Each swing sent shockwaves of pain through her broken body. This was not work. It was a slow, deliberate form of annihilation. She survived the mines, scarred deeper than any brand. Her escape was a transfer to a new master, known for his extreme cruelty. This was the fourth punishment, a descent into a personalized hell. The air in his villa hummed with suppressed violence. Here, constant! Physical toil was replaced by psychological torment, unpredictable cruelty, public shaming, and the terror of witnessing the pain of others. She learned to become invisible, to stifle any flicker of emotion. The casual, routine nature of the cruelty was what truly shattered her. It was a cold, calculating exercise of power. Her spirit was his new conquest. The whispers solidified into certainty. The master, tired of her quiet defiance, decided she was a lost cause. She was to be sold for public execution in the arena. For Rome, this was the ultimate statement, transforming individual suffering into collective entertainment, and a chilling warning. The day came. Heavy chains were placed on her wrists and ankles. She was led through back alleys towards the roaring arena. Surprisingly, her mind was clear. Beneath the cold current of fear lay a fierce determination. If her life was to end, she would face it with an unbroken gaze. The gate groaned open, revealing the blinding sunlight of the arena. The roar of the crowd was deafening, a visceral, animalistic sound. She stepped onto the blood-stained sand and slowly raised her head, her eyes scanning the sea of faces in a final, defiant act of presence. She saw her former master in the imperial box, his face a mask of satisfaction. But as she stood there, she knew he had not won. The physical chains held her, but her spirit remained untamed. The executioner approached. She did not flinch. Her eyes remained fixed on a distant point beyond the walls, on the hazy outline of the hills she had once tried to reach. The sound of the sword was swift. A clean, sharp hiss through the air. The sun beat down on the sand, indifferent to the life extinguished, to the silent, defiant scream that was finally silenced. And as the dust settled, the echo of her struggle lingered, a faint whisper in history, a testament to the human spirit that dared to dream of freedom. Even in the face of the most brutal empire,